Hey guys, in this video we're doing 6.4, which is something new on the graphs, and we're talking about x-intercepts. And you already know this, but an x-intercept is where it's the point where the function crosses or intersects the x-axis. A polynomial function of degree n, so just some random number. So if the degree is 7, we're talking about 7 here, it can have at most n real zeros. So that means it's going to cross whatever the degree is. If the degree is 4, then it could only have up to 4 x-intercepts. If the degree is 7, it could have up to 7 x-intercepts. But even more specific, if that degree is an even number, then it has to have an even number of zeros, or none at all. So let's say that we have like x to the 4th. It could have 4 zeros, or x-intercepts, 2 or no x-intercepts. Remember, zeros, x-intercepts, roots, and solutions all mean the same thing. Now, an odd degree, like x to the 5th, has to have an odd number of zeros. So it could have 5, 3, or 1. So it has at most 5, and it also has to have an odd number. So let's look at a graph, and I want you to graph this on your calculator. So if I go to y equals and type it in, x cubed plus x squared minus 2x. I'm going to go to the table first because going to the table gets you the most accurate points. -2, 0, -1, 2, 0, 0, 1, 0, and 2, 8. And then if I click the graph button, I can actually look at it and sketch it out. I think it's easier to kind of get that little middle section where all the turns are and then add in the ends. Makes it easier. And so by looking at this graph, we can tell that the x-intercepts are at -2, 0, and 1. Now I'm going to skip this next little box because we'll get into that later, so just skip it. And we're going to talk about something called the multiplicity. So the multiplicity of a 0 or of an x-intercept, that's the number of times that we have its factor. And if you remember back to quadratics, we learned about factoring. And sometimes when you factored, you got the same number, like you had like x plus 5, x plus 5. And that would be a multiplicity of 2 because it happened 2 times. And so if we look at number 1, we have this x plus 2 with a squared, and we have the 2x plus 5 with a cubed. And so we want to find the x-intercepts and the multiplicity. So just for the x-intercept, you take what's in the parentheses and set it equal to 0. That should seem familiar to you because we did it in the quadratics unit. And so we subtract 2 from both sides to get x equals -2. And then for the multiplicity, I look at the exponent. It's an exponent of 2, so the multiplicity is 2. And then we have 2x plus 5. Set that equal to 0. So if we subtract 5, we get 2x equals -5. And then we divide by 2. That gives us x equals negative 5/2. If you put negative 2.5, that's okay. And then the multiplicity is 3 because it has an exponent of 3. Number 2, we have this factor. And if it's just an x, we could put parentheses around it. You don't have to. But we just say x equals 0. And there's nothing else to add or subtract. So that's it. It has a multiplicity of 2 because the exponent is 2. Then we have x minus 7 equals 0. And if we add 7, we get x equals 7 with a multiplicity of 6. And then we have 2x plus 1 equals 0. Our first step is to subtract 1. So 2x equals negative 1. And then we divide by 2. X equals negative 1/2. Now, I don't see an exponent, but if there's not one, we just assume it is 1. So multiplicity is 1. We only had that factor one time. And I'm going to skip number 3 because that one requires some factoring, which we will do later. And then number 4, I want you to change that and put it in factored form. And we're going to talk about how, or why are we even looking at the multiplicity? Why is that even a thing? Why is that even important? And so I want you to graph number 4. So when we graph it and we go to the table, we have the point 0, 0, 1, 4, 2, 2, 3, 0, and 4, 4. And you're like, oh, that makes an X. Well, look at your graph and you can see what it makes. It looks like that. And so we can see where our x-intercepts are. If we have x equals 0, that's the first one. What is your multiplicity here? That one has a multiplicity of 1, which we need to note that that's an odd number. 1 is an odd number. Because it didn't have an exponent, you assume it's 1. And then we have x equals 3. There's my other one. It has a multiplicity of 2, which is an even number. So let's look at the graph. The first x-intercept was 1. Notice how the graph actually completely runs through that point. That had a multiplicity of 1, which we said was odd. So whenever the multiplicity is odd, the graph crosses at 0. It crosses through. When the multiplicity is 2 here, or specifically an even number, it doesn't cross. It kind of touches it and bounces back. So if the multiplicity is even, it bounces. If you have a hard time remembering that, the word cross has an odd number of letters and the word bounce has an even number of letters. So let's do some examples. We are going to figure out what the 0 or the x-intercept is, determine the multiplicity, and tell if it bounce or cross. And you don't have, if you can do these in your head without writing the x plus 7 equals 0, by all means you can do that. So the first one, x plus 7 equals 0, you know that we subtract 7 to get x equals -7. So the 0 is -7. It has a multiplicity of 2. And because that's an even number, it bounces. Then we have 2x plus 1 equals 0. So if we subtract 1, we get 2x equals -1. And then when we divide by 2, we get x equals -1/2. Now I don't see an exponent, so we assume it's a 1. So the multiplicity is 1, and that's an odd number, so it's going to cross. Then we have x minus 4 equals 0. Adding 4 gives us x equals 4. The 3 exponent, that's my multiplicity. And because the multiplicity is an odd number, it's going to cross. So now I want you to try number 6. Pause the video, fill in the chart, and then play it back to see your answer. So we should have had 0, 4, bounce, 5 halves, or 2.5, 1, cross, -3, 2, bounce. Now, number 7 is kind of working backwards. This time, it gives us the x-intercept of -6 with a multiplicity of 2, and 2 with a multiplicity of 1. And we have to give, like the question, we're telling what the equation is. So the important thing to remember is that whatever your 0 is, your factor is the opposite of that. So if we have a 0 of x, or of -6, our factor is going to be x plus 6. And it's going to have a 2 exponent because the multiplicity is 2. And then my other factor is x minus 2. Uh-oh. And the multiplicity is 1. You really don't write the 1 exponent. Now, the question did say standard form, which would mean that I wanted you to multiply those out, but I'm okay with you just leaving it here in this factored form. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Have a great day.